My daughter-in-law slapped me across the face on Thanksgiving Day, and I did not say a word. I just picked up my cracked glasses from the floor and walked away. The next night, I cooked her a 5-star dinner with the most expensive wine in my cellar. She smiled at my son and whispered that the old man finally knew his place. She had no idea that the steak on her plate was the last meal she would ever eat in my house, or that the guest knocking on the door was not there to join the party, but to end it. Before I tell you how I served justice cold, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to teach an ungrateful relative a lesson they would never forget. My name is Augustus Miller, but everyone calls me Gus. I am 70 years old, and I spent 40 of those years building houses with my own 2 hands. I know the weight of a hammer, and I know the smell of fresh pine and wet concrete. I built the 4-bedroom colonial house in suburban Philadelphia where I currently live. I laid the foundation myself. I framed the walls. I installed the wiring. Every beam and every nail in this place holds a drop of my sweat. It was supposed to be the sanctuary where my wife Martha and I would grow old together watching our grandchildren play in the yard. But Martha passed away from cancer 3 years ago, and the silence she left behind was heavy enough to crush a man. That was when my son Justin moved back in. I thought it would be a blessing. I thought having family around would fill the empty rooms with life. I was wrong. Justin brought his wife Brittany with him. Brittany is 30 years old and calls herself a lifestyle entrepreneur. Though in the 6 months she has lived under my roof, I have never seen her do a single day of honest work. The invasion happened slowly at first, like black mold creeping behind drywall. It started with small requests. Brittany said the guest room was too small for her yoga equipment, so they took the master bedroom. My bedroom. The room where Martha and I had slept for 35 years. She said she needed the natural light for her social media videos. I moved into the guest room without complaining because I wanted to keep the peace for Justin. But the guest room was not enough. Within a month, she claimed she needed a dedicated studio for her live streams. She told me that my presence on the 2nd floor was distracting her creative flow. So here I am. The man who built this house is now living in the basement. It is a finished basement, but it is dark and smells of damp earth and furnace oil. I sleep on a pull-out sofa that hurts my arthritic back every single morning. The upstairs world belongs to them now. I sat at a small folding card table in the corner of the basement, staring at my dinner. It was a Tuesday evening. Upstairs, I could hear the thumping bass of pop music. Brittany was filming a TikTok video about healthy living. I looked down at my plate. It was a flimsy red plastic plate. A toddler plate. Brittany had banned me from using the ceramic dinnerware. She told me last week that my hands were too shaky, and she did not want me breaking the bone china set she had bought. She bought that set with my credit card. She said it was for networking dinners that would boost her career. I cut a piece of dry meatloaf with a plastic knife that bent under the pressure. The indignity of it burned in my chest, hotter than the heartburn I got from the cheap frozen food they bought for me. I pay the mortgage. I pay the electricity that powers her ring lights. I pay for the high-speed internet she uses to tell strangers online how successful she is. Yet I am eating off plastic like a prisoner in my own home. I looked at my hands. They are rough and calloused and covered in liver spots, but they are strong hands. They built a life. Now they were trembling, not from age but from a rage I was trying so hard to suppress. I did it for Justin. He is my only son. He is soft. He never had my grit. I always tried to protect him from the harshness of the world, and maybe that was my mistake. I protected him so well he never learned how to stand up for himself or for his father. I finished my meal and walked to the utility sink to wash my plastic plate. The pipes in this house are old, and they carry sound if you know how to listen. The main ventilation shaft runs right through the basement ceiling directly under the kitchen island upstairs. I was scrubbing the grease off the plastic when I heard voices. They were not the cheerful, fake voices Brittany used for her videos. These were sharp and panicked. I turned off the tap and stood still in the shadows. You have to tell him, Justin. That was Brittany. Her voice sounded like a hiss. I cannot do it, Britt. He already gave us the master bedroom. He pays all the bills, ma coton. I cannot ask him to sell the lake house. That was Justin. His voice was thin and wavering. The lake house. My heart stopped. The cabin on Lake Tahoe was not just a piece of property. It was Martha's favorite place on earth. It was where we spent our summers. It was where we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the water, holding hands when she was too sick to walk. Her ashes were scattered in the rose garden by the dock. I had sworn I would never sell it. We do not have a choice, you idiot. Brittany screamed, but it was a whispered scream. The deadline is next week. If we do not come up with $200,000, the investors are going to go to the police. It is a Ponzi scheme, Justin. We are at the bottom of the pyramid. If we do not pay back the principal to the early investors, we are going to prison for fraud. My grip tightened on the plastic plate until it snapped in half, cutting my thumb. Blood welled up, but I did not feel the pain. My son and his wife were not just lazy. They were criminals. They had gambled away money they did not have, and now they wanted to sell my memories to pay for their greed. He does not even use it, Brittany continued. He is too old to drive up there. It is just sitting there rotting. It is a waste of capital. We get him to sign the power of attorney on Thanksgiving. We tell him it is for tax purposes or for the future grandchildren. He is senile anyway. He won't read the fine print. I am not sure. Justin stammered. Look at me, Justin. Do you want to go to jail? Do you want me to go to jail? You need to man up. Get the old man to sign the papers on Thursday. Or we are done. I heard the sound of footsteps storming off and a door slamming. I stood there in the dark basement, with blood dripping from my thumb onto the concrete floor. The physical pain was nothing compared to the knife twisting in my gut. They thought I was senile. They thought I was a resource to be mined until dry. They were planning to steal the last piece of Martha I had left. Thanksgiving arrived 2 days later, with a gray sky and a biting wind. The house smelled of burnt sage and overcooked turkey. Brittany had insisted on cooking because she wanted to post the perfect family holiday on Instagram. In reality, she had ordered most of the sides from a caterer and managed to dry out the turkey until it looked like shoe leather. I dressed in my best flannel shirt and slacks. I shaved and combed my thinning gray hair. I walked upstairs. The living room was staged like a magazine cover. There were pumpkins painted gold and fake autumn leaves scattered on the table. Brittany was adjusting her phone on a tripod. Smile, Gus. She snapped without looking at me. And try not to slouch. You ruin the aesthetic when you look like a tired old dog. I sat down at the head of the table. Usually that is the place of honor. Today it felt like the defendant is chair. Justin sat to my right. He refused to make eye contact with me. He kept swirling his wine glass, staring into the red liquid, as if searching for his lost spine. We ate in relative silence, interrupted only by Brittany stopping us to take photos of the food. When the plates were cleared, she wiped her mouth with a linen napkin and gave Justin a sharp kick under the table. I felt the vibration through the floorboards. Justin cleared his throat. Dad. This turkey was great, right? It was dry as dust. But I nodded. It was fine. Brittany reached under the table and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She placed it next to the centerpiece. We have been thinking, Gus. She started, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made my skin crawl. You are getting older, and this big house and the cabin up at the lake, it is a lot for you to worry about. We want to take that burden off your shoulders. She slid the envelope toward me. This is just some standard paperwork. It puts the Lake Tahoe property into a trust managed by Justin and me. It is for the future, for your grandchildren. so we can renovate it and make it safe for a nursery. We want to keep it in the family. Lies. Pure venomous lies. They wanted to sell it to pay off a crypto scam debt. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Justin. Is this true, son? You want to build a nursery at the lake house? Justin turned pale. He opened his mouth, but Brittany cut in. Of course he does. We are trying to build a legacy here, Gus. Just sign the papers. I have a pen right here. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy. I did not open it. I simply pushed it back across the table. No, I said. The room went deadly silent. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to roar. Excuse me, Brittany asked, her eyes narrowing into slits. I said no. That house is not going into a trust, and it is certainly not being sold. That is where Martha rests. It stays as it is until I die. Brittany stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. The mask of the sweet daughter-in-law fell away instantly, revealing the desperate, cornered animal beneath. You selfish old man, she spat the words out. You are sitting on a gold mine, and you are letting it rot because you are obsessed with a dead woman. Martha is gone, Gus. She is dust. She does not care about the house. But we are here. We are alive. We need this. Do not speak her name. My voice was low, but it carried the rumble of 40 years of construction sites. I will speak whatever I want, she screamed, slamming her hands on the table. We take care of you, we let you live here, we tolerate your shuffling and your coughing and your old man smell, and this is how you repay us by holding out on us. You live here rent-free, Brittany, I said calmly. I pay for the food in your stomach and the clothes on your back. Justin, please make him listen. She turned to her husband. Justin looked up, tears in his eyes. Dad, please, just sign it. It is complicated. We really need this. I looked at my son. The boy I taught to fish. The boy I taught to ride a bike. I saw nothing of myself in him. I saw a hollow shell filled with fear. I am not signing, Justin, and I think it is time we discussed your living arrangements. That was the trigger. Brittany lunged. She did not think. She just reacted with pure, unadulterated fury. She swung her arm and her palm connected with the side of my face with a sickening crack. The force of the blow knocked my head to the side. My glasses flew off my nose and skittered across the floor, hitting the baseboard. One of the lenses shattered. My cheek burned. My ear rang. But the physical pain was distant. What I felt most was a cold clarity. A sudden, absolute understanding that the bond was broken. There was no family here. There were only parasites. I did not raise my hand. I did not yell. I slowly turned my head back to look at her. Brittany was breathing heavily, her chest heaving, her hand still suspended in the air. She looked shocked at her own violence, but there was no regret in her eyes, only defiance. I looked at Justin. He was staring at me, mouth open. Did you see that, Justin? I asked. My voice was steady. Justin looked at his wife, then at me. He looked at the papers on the table. Dad, he whispered. You provoked her. Why do you have to be so stubborn? Just give her what she wants so we can stop fighting. That was the moment my heart finally hardened. It turned into the same concrete I used to pour into foundations. Cold, gray, unbreakable. I stood up. My chair did not make a sound. I walked over to the baseboard and picked up my broken glasses. I held them in my hand, feeling the sharp edge of the cracked glass against my thumb. I placed the glasses in my pocket. I looked at Brittany, who was now crossing her arms, daring me to do something. I looked at Justin, who was studying the tablecloth. I understand, I said. Brittany let out a harsh laugh. Good. Finally. So you will sign, I will handle everything tomorrow, I said. We will have a special dinner tomorrow night, just the three of us, and we will settle the ownership of everything once and for all. I turned and walked away. "Where are you going? We are not done," Brittany yelled after me. I did not answer. I walked past the kitchen, past the fake pumpkins, and down the stairs to the basement. I closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the pull-out sofa in the dark. My cheek was throbbing, but my mind was working faster than it had in years. They wanted the house. They wanted the assets. They wanted control. I reached under the mattress of the sofa and pulled out an old metal lockbox. I dialed the combination. Inside was not money. It was a phone book and a spare key. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had not called in 20 years. It rang 3 times. Solomon King Law Office. A gravelly voice answered. "We are closed for the holiday." "Solomon, it is Gus Miller." There was a pause. Then the tone of the voice changed. It became sharp alert. "Gus, I have not heard from you since the platoon reunion. Is everything all right?" "No, Solomon. Everything is far from all right. But it is going to be. I need you to come over for dinner tomorrow night. And bring the sheriff." "Why?" Solomon asked. "Because I am about to tear down a house I built. And I need a witness." I hung up the phone. Upstairs I could hear Brittany laughing. She thought she had won. She thought the slap had broken me. She did not know that she had just hammered the final nail into her own coffin. I lay back on the lumpy mattress and stared at the ceiling. I did not sleep that night. I plotted. And for the first time in months I smiled. I woke up before the sun came up. The silence in the basement was heavy, broken only by the hum of the furnace. I walked to the small mirror in the corner and looked at my reflection. A large bruise was blooming across my left cheek, turning from angry red to a sickly purple. It throbbed with every beat of my heart, a constant reminder of the line that had been crossed. Most men would have called the police right then. Most men would have packed a bag and left. But I am not most men. I spent 40 years in construction. You do not walk away when a structure becomes unstable. You reinforce it, or you bring it down in a controlled demolition. I went upstairs to the kitchen. The house was quiet. I made a pot of coffee, black and strong, the way I have drunk it every morning since I was 19. I stood by the window looking out at the frost on the lawn. My hands were steady. The rage I felt last night had cooled into something solid and sharp like a steel beam. I heard footsteps upstairs. Heavy, careless footsteps. Brittany. Then lighter, hesitant ones. Justin. When they walked into the kitchen, the air instantly grew thick with tension. Brittany was wearing a silk robe, scrolling through her phone, completely ignoring my presence. Justin looked like he had not slept. He saw the bruise on my face and flinched quickly, looking down at his feet. He was ashamed, but not ashamed enough to speak. Brittany went straight to the fridge, grabbing a bottle of expensive mineral water. She finally looked at me, her eyes scanning the mark she had left on my face with zero remorse. She was waiting for me to yell. She was waiting for the fight so she could play the victim again. I put my coffee cup down on the granite counter. I took a deep breath. This was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I had to swallow my pride. I had to become the old, defeated man they thought I was. "Good morning," I said. My voice was raspy. Brittany stopped drinking. She raised an eyebrow. "I did a lot of thinking last night," I continued, keeping my eyes low, acting the part of the beaten dog. "I realized something. You were right, Brittany." She lowered the water bottle. "Excuse me," she asked, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I said you were right." I looked at Justin, then back at her. "I am holding on to the past too tight. I am an old man. I get confused. I get stubborn. The world is moving fast and I am just standing in the way. That house at the lake, it is just wood and nails. It should be used for the future, for your family. I saw Justin's shoulders drop 3 inches. The relief washed over him so visibly it was pathetic. He took a step forward. Dad, do you really mean that I do, son? I lied. The lie tasted like bile, but I forced it out. I just want peace. I do not want to fight anymore. That slap, it woke me up. It made me realize I have been difficult. Brittany laughed. It was a cold, victorious sound. Well, I am glad you finally came to your senses, Gus. It took a little tough love, but we got there. So you will sign the papers? I nodded slowly. I will sign. But I want to do it right. I want to do it with dignity. What do you mean? She asked, her suspicion flaring up for a second. I want to have a proper dinner tonight. A peace offering. I will go to the market. I will buy those Wagyu steaks you like. I will open the vintage Cabernet from the cellar. We sit down, we eat like a family, and then right here at this table I will sign the transfer papers. Brittany's eyes lit up at the mention of the expensive wine and steak. She was a creature of appetite, and I knew exactly how to feed it. That sounds acceptable, she said, checking her nails. But no tricks, Gus. I have a notary on speed dial. No notary, I said quickly. I do not want a stranger in the house tonight. It feels too clinical. I will ask a couple of old friends to come over as witnesses, just to make it official so the county clerk does not question my signature later. Just old folks like me. It will be quiet. Brittany waved her hand dismissively. Fine. Whatever makes you feel important. As long as that signature is on the dotted line by 9 o'clock, I do not care who watches. Thank you, I said. I will get everything ready. You two go on and have your day. Justin walked past me and squeezed my shoulder. Barely. Thanks, Dad. I knew you would understand. We really need this. I watched them leave the kitchen. I listened to them laughing as they got into their car in the driveway. Brittany was probably already posting on her social media about how she had successfully negotiated a major real estate acquisition. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was a senile old fool who was trading his legacy for a quiet life. As soon as the car pulled away, I poured my coffee down the sink. My hands were not shaking anymore. I was not confused. I was not frail. I was a contractor, looking at a blueprint, and I had just laid the foundation for the most important project of my life. I walked to the calendar on the wall and looked at the date. I picked up the phone. I did not call the butcher first. I called the one man I knew who hated bullies as much as I did. It was time to get to work. I had 12 hours to set the stage. The menu was planned. The wine was selected. And the guests of honor had no idea they were walking into a courtroom, not a dining room. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the door. The gray zone was over. Now the real operation began. The moment the front door clicked shut, the silence that filled the house was heavy, but it was not empty. It was the kind of silence that comes before a controlled explosion. I watched from the living room window as Brittany backed her white SUV out of the driveway. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf wrapped around her head like she was a movie star dodging paparazzi. She was heading to the most expensive spa in town, a place where they charge $300 to wrap you in mud and tell you that you are special. She was celebrating. In her mind, the war was over and she had won. She thought the old man was broken and the house was hers. As soon as her taillights disappeared around the corner, the stoop in my shoulders vanished. The confused, trembling old man she had seen at breakfast evaporated. I stood up straight. My joints ached, but the adrenaline pumping through my veins masked the pain. I was not Gus, the retired contractor, anymore. I was Sergeant Miller, and I had a mission to execute. I walked to the landline phone in the kitchen. I did not use my cell phone because Brittany synced our cloud accounts, and she could see my call logs. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice before a deep, gravelly voice answered. Solomon here. It is Gus. The package is ready for delivery. There was a pause on the other end. Solomon King did not ask questions he did not need to. We served in the same unit 40 years ago. He went to law school on the GI Bill and became the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state while I built houses. He knew my voice and he knew the code. I will be there at 700 hours, Solomon said. Do I need to bring the heavy artillery? Bring the sheriff, I said. And Solomon, make sure you bring the full file on the trust fund. I want everything in writing. Copy that. Out. The line went dead. Phase 1 was complete. Now I needed the ammunition. I went to the pantry and pulled out the small stepladder. I carried it to the center of the kitchen right under the smoke detector. Brittany was smart in a manipulative way, but she was not observant. She noticed things like brand names and dirty shoes, but she never looked up. She never noticed that the smoke detector had a tiny pinhole lens that blinked once every 30 seconds. I had installed it 6 months ago, not because of her, but because the previous housekeeper had been stealing silverware. I fired the housekeeper, but I never took down the camera. I climbed the ladder, my boots gripping the rungs. I popped the cover off the detector and pulled out the micro SD card. It was smaller than my fingernail, but it held enough data to ruin 3 lives. I sat down at the kitchen table and slid the card into my laptop. I opened the file marked yesterday. My finger hovered over the play button. Part of me did not want to watch. Living through it once was enough. But I needed to be sure. I needed to see it with cold, objective eyes. I clicked play. The video was crisp and clear. I saw myself sitting at the table. I saw Justin looking down at his plate like a coward. I saw Brittany standing up, her face twisted in a mask of ugly rage. And then I saw the slap. On video, it looked even worse. It was violent and unprovoked. But what hurt more was what happened after. I watched Justin. I watched my own son sit there and do absolutely nothing. He did not jump up. He did not defend me. He just shrank into his chair, terrified of his wife. That silence from him cut deeper than her hand ever could. I saved the clip and made 3 backup copies, one on the laptop, one on a flash drive, and one I emailed to a secure server. Evidence has a way of disappearing when people get desperate, and I was not taking any chances. Next was the money. I grabbed my car keys and headed out the back door. I drove my old Ford pickup truck to the bank downtown. It was a 20-minute drive, and I spent every second of it rehearsing what I would say. I needed to be calm. I could not look like a frantic victim. The bank lobby was quiet and smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I walked up to the counter. Mrs. Gable was there. She has been the head teller for 15 years. She knows my birthday, and she knows how I like my bills sorted. Good morning, Gus. She smiled, but her smile faltered when she saw the bruise on my cheek. Oh my goodness. What happened to you? I fell. I lied smoothly. Clumsy old feet. Mrs. Gable, I need to look at my transaction history for the last 30 days. I think there might be a mistake with my statement. Of course. She typed on her keyboard, her eyes scanning the screen. She frowned. Her fingers stopped moving. Is something wrong? I asked, though I already felt a cold knot tightening in my stomach. Gus, did you authorize a withdrawal last Tuesday? She asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. How much? I asked. $50,000. It was a cashier check made out to a company called Crypto Future Holdings. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. $50,000. That was nearly all the liquid cash I had in my checking account. It was the money for property taxes and emergency repairs. Number 1. I said, my voice steady. I did not authorize that. Mrs. Gable looked pale. She turned the monitor so I could see. There was a digital scan of the withdrawal slip. At the bottom was a signature. It read, Augustus Miller. I leaned in closer. The handwriting was good. It was almost perfect. But the loop on the G was too wide. and the slant was just slightly off to the right. It was a forgery, but it was not just any forgery. It was a forgery done by someone who had spent a lifetime watching me sign report cards and permission slips. "Who came in to do this, Mrs. Gable?" I asked. "It was your son, Justin," she said quietly. "He had your ID, Gus. He said you were sick and needed the cash for medical treatments. He said it was urgent. I trusted him because he is your son." I closed my eyes for a second. The betrayal was absolute. He had not just stolen my money, he had stolen my reputation. He had used my name and my supposed illness to rob me blind. "Can you print that slip for me?" I asked. "And I need a full audit trail of that check, where it was deposited, when it cleared, everything." Mrs. Gable nodded rapidly, printing page after page. I stood there holding on to the marble counter to keep from falling. My son was not just a coward, he was a felon. Forging a signature on a bank document was federal fraud. I took the stack of warm papers from her. "Do you want me to call the police, Gus?" she asked, her hand hovering over the silent alarm button. "Number 1. I said, putting the papers into a thick envelope. "Not yet. I will handle this." I walked out of the bank into the bright sunlight. The envelope felt heavy in my hand like a brick. I had the video. I had the bank records. I had the undeniable proof that the people living in my house were not family, they were predators. I sat in my truck for a long time staring at the steering wheel. I thought about the day Justin was born. I thought about how small his hand looked wrapped around my finger. I wondered where that little boy went, and when this stranger took his place. A stranger who would watch me get hit and then rob me in the same week. I started the engine. The sadness was gone now, replaced by a cold, mechanical determination. I had work to do. I had a dinner to cook, and I had a trap to spring. I drove home not as a father returning to his children, but as a judge returning to his courtroom. The evidence was gathered. The verdict was already clear. All that was left was the sentencing. The kitchen was silent except for the rhythmic rasp of steel against stone. I stood at the butcher block island holding my favorite chef's knife. It was an 8-inch carbon steel blade I had bought 30 years ago. It was stained with the patina of 1,000 meals, but the edge was still razor sharp. I drew the blade down the whetstone. Slide, rasp, turn, slide, rasp. It was a hypnotic sound. It was the sound of preparation. On the counter sat 2 pounds of a 5 Wagyu beef. The meat was a deep ruby red, marbled with veins of white fat that looked like a river delta on a map. It cost more than my first car. Brittany had always complained that I bought cheap ground chuck. Tonight she was getting the best meat money could buy. I wanted her to taste the richness of the life she thought she was stealing just before I took it all away. I placed the beef on the cutting board. I did not hack at it. I sliced it with surgical precision. The knife moved through the expensive protein like it was soft butter. I trimmed the excess fat. I seasoned it with coarse sea salt and cracked black pepper. My movements were slow and deliberate. There was no shaking in my hands today. I felt the same cold calm I used to feel before a demolition job when the charges were set and the perimeter was clear. I reached for the bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon I had brought up from the cellar. It was a 2010 vintage Dusty and Forgotten. I uncorked it and poured it into a crystal decanter. The dark purple liquid swirled, hitting the glass with a soft splash. It needed to breathe. The truth is like wine. If you keep it bottled up too long, it turns sour, but if you let it out at the right moment, it is intoxicating. I checked the clock on the microwave. 5:45. The stage was set. The aroma of rosemary and searing garlic began to fill the air, masking the lingering scent of betrayal that had hung in this house for weeks. Then I heard them. The front door did not just open, it burst inward. Laughter spilled into the hallway, loud and grating. It was the sound of people who thought they had already won the lottery. "We are home." Brittany's voice echoed off the high ceilings. She sounded manic, high on the adrenaline of her perceived victory. I wiped my hands on a towel and kept my back to them, continuing to sear the steaks in the cast-iron skillet. The meat hissed aggressively as it hit the hot metal. Justin walked in first, carrying bags of designer clothes. He looked flushed. "Hey, Dad. Smells good in here. Really good." Brittany followed him. She was glowing. Her skin looked polished from her day at the spa, and her hair was blown out to perfection. She dropped her purse on the counter right next to where I was working, ignoring the grease splatter. "Wow, Gus," she said, looking at the steaks. "You really went all out. I guess you really are sorry." I turned the steaks over. The crust was a perfect mahogany brown. "I am a man of my word, Brittany," I said without turning around. "Good." She clapped her hands together. "Because I have a surprise. I hope you made enough for company." I paused. My grip on the tongs tightened. We agreed it would be just us. Brittany laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, do not be such a hermit. I ran into the squad at the spa. Tiffany and Chloe. And Marcus is coming too. I told them we were having a little celebration tonight. A big announcement about the property. They are dying to congratulate us." She leaned in closer to me, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that made my skin crawl. "Besides Gus, I want witnesses. I want everyone to see how generous you are being. It makes for great content. They are live streaming the whole dinner." She thought she was cornering me. She thought that by bringing an audience she was ensuring I could not back out. She was bringing a crowd to watch the old man kneel and surrender his kingdom. I looked at the 3 steaks sizzling in the pan. Then I looked at the 3 extra expensive plates I had stacked in the cupboard. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, though it did not reach my eyes. "The more the merrier," I said. "Perfect." Brittany squealed, pulling out her phone to check her reflection. "They will be here in 10 minutes. I'm going to go change into something more camera-ready. Justin, go get the good champagne glasses. We are popping bottles tonight." They scrambled out of the kitchen like excited children, leaving me alone with the hissing meat. I reached into the fridge and pulled out 3 more steaks. I had bought extras just in case. I seasoned them quickly. My heart rate did not climb. If she wanted an audience, she would get one. She wanted a show. She wanted witnesses to her triumph. I flipped the meat again. "Be careful what you wish for, Brittany," I whispered to the empty room. I walked over to the dining table and added 3 more chairs. I adjusted the silverware lining up the knives so they pointed straight ahead. Everything had to be perfect. Tonight was not just a dinner, it was a performance. And I was about to give them a finale they would never forget. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. It was not the polite chime of a guest, but the rapid-fire pressing of someone who expected the world to open up for them immediately. Brittany practically sprinted to the door, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood floor. She threw the door open and screamed with delight. Her squad had arrived. Tiffany and Chloe walked in first, bringing a gust of expensive perfume and cold autumn air with them. They looked like carbon copies of Brittany dressed in cocktail dresses that were too tight and holding designer clutches that cost more than my first truck. Behind them was Marcus, a tall, thin man who was already holding a large camera on a gimbal, recording everything. "Oh my God, you guys made it!" Brittany shrieked, pulling them into a group hug that looked rehearsed for the camera. "We would not miss it, babe," Tiffany said, her voice high and piercing. "You said big news. We live for big news." Marcus pointed the camera at me. "And there is the man of the hour. Look at him, so cute in his little flannel shirt." I stood by the dining table, my hands clasped behind my back. I felt like an exhibit in a zoo, a rare endangered species called the homeowner, being pushed out of his natural habitat. Hi, everyone, I said, keeping my voice low and harmless. Welcome to my home. Brittany rushed over and wrapped a possessive arm around my shoulder. She squeezed tight, but her fingers dug into my collarbone. Our home, Gus. Remember, we are a team now. She turned to the camera, flashing a dazzling white smile. Guys, you have no idea how hard it has been. Caring for an aging parent is a full-time job. The confusion, the mood swings, but we are finally turning a corner. Gus has decided to simplify his life. He is handing over the reins to Justin and me so he can rest. Chloe made a pouting face. Oh, that is so sweet of you, Britt. You are such a saint. Most people would just put him in a home. I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat. A saint. The woman who slapped me 24 hours ago was now being canonized by her vapid friends. I looked at Justin. He was in the kitchen pouring drinks, avoiding the scene entirely. He knew the truth, but he was letting the lie breathe. He was letting them paint me as the senile burden, and his wife as the savior. Can I get anyone a drink? I asked, playing the part of the obedient servant. Oh, white wine spritzer for me, Gus. And make it light on the wine, Tiffany ordered without looking at me. She was already busy typing on her phone. I went to the kitchen. I poured the drinks. My movements were automatic. Inside my head, I was counting down. The clock on the microwave read 7:15. They were late. When I came back out with the tray of drinks, the group had moved to the living room. Brittany was holding court, showing them the architectural plans for the nursery she claimed she was going to build at the lake house. We are going to knock down that old porch, she was saying. It is structurally unsound anyway, and we will put in floor-to-ceiling glass. It needs to be modern. That porch was made of hand-hewn cedar. I built it so Martha could watch the hummingbirds. They were talking about destroying it like it was rotting garbage. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a solid, heavy knock. 3 distinct raps. Brittany looked up, annoyed. That must be the notary. Finally, good help is so hard to find these days. She gestured at me with her wine glass. Get that, will you, Gus? And tell them to wipe their feet. I just had the rugs cleaned. I walked to the door. My heart rate slowed down. This was it. I opened the door. Standing on the porch were 2 men who looked like they were carved out of granite. Solomon King was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He was 6'2" with a shaved head and eyes that missed nothing. He carried a leather briefcase that looked heavy. Beside him stood Sheriff Barnes. He was not in uniform, but he wore a navy blue blazer and his badge was clipped discreetly to his belt. He was a big man with a thick mustache and a face weathered by 30 years of law enforcement. Good evening, Gus, Solomon said. His voice was deep and calm. Right on time, gentlemen, I said, stepping aside. They walked in. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Tiffany and Chloe stopped giggling. Marcus lowered his camera slightly. These were not the kind of men Brittany's friends were used to seeing. These were men of consequence. Brittany stood up, smoothing her dress. She plastered on a polite smile, but her eyes were cold. About time, she said. You must be the notary and his assistant. Look, we are on a schedule here, so let us just get the paperwork out. I assume you brought the transfer deeds. Solomon did not smile. He did not rush to shake her hand. He stood in the center of the room like a monolith. I am not a notary, Mrs. Miller, Solomon said, and this is not my assistant. Brittany frowned. Then who are you? Gus said he was inviting witnesses. I am Gus represents counsel, Solomon said, setting his briefcase on the dining table with a heavy thud. And this is Sheriff Barnes. The word sheriff hung in the air like smoke. Justin dropped the bottle opener he was holding. It clattered loudly on the floor. Sheriff Brittany laughed nervously. Why is the sheriff here? Is there a problem with the neighborhood watch? Sheriff Barnes stepped forward. He did not look at Brittany. He looked at me. "Gus invited us for dinner, ma'am," he said. "And he said there was some business to discuss regarding the estate." Brittany looked at me, confusion warring with anger on her face. "You invited a lawyer and a cop to our celebration." "Gus, what is going on? You said old friends." "They are old friends," I said, walking over to stand next to Solomon. "We served in the Corps together, and they are here to witness the transfer, just like you wanted." Brittany relaxed slightly. "Oh. Okay. Well, that is a little dramatic, but fine. As long as they are here to sign the papers." She turned to her friends. "Sorry, guys, just some of Gus's old war buddies. You know how they are. Always so serious." She motioned to the table. "Well, sit down then. The steaks are getting cold. And we have a live stream to get back to." We all moved to the table. The seating arrangement was peculiar. Brittany sat at the head where I usually sat. Justin was to her right. Her three friends clustered around them. I sat at the other end. Solomon sat to my right, and the sheriff to my left. It looked like two opposing armies meeting on a battlefield. Marcus set up his tripod again, pointing the lens directly at the table. "Okay, everyone," Brittany chirped, raising her glass. "Before we eat, let us get the boring stuff out of the way. Gus has a few papers to sign that will officially hand over the management of the family assets to Justin and me. It is a beautiful moment of passing the torch." She looked at me, her eyes hard and demanding. "Go ahead, Gus. Tell them how happy you are to do this." I looked at the camera lens. Then I looked at the steak knife in front of me. I picked it up. The blade caught the light of the chandelier. "I am not happy, Brittany," I said clearly. The room went silent. The smile froze on her face. "Excuse me," she hissed. "I said I am not happy, and I am not passing the torch. I am putting out the fire." I nodded to Solomon. "Now." Solomon opened his briefcase. He did not pull out a transfer deed. He pulled out a black iPad and a stack of legal files. He placed the iPad in the center of the table facing Brittany and her friends. "I think we should watch a little movie before we eat," I said. Brittany stood up, her chair screeching. "What is this? What are you doing?" "Sit down, Mrs. Miller," the sheriff said. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of authority that made knees weak. Brittany sat. Solomon tapped the screen. The video began to play. It was not the polished, filtered video Brittany was used to. It was grainy footage from a smoke detector camera. But the audio was crystal clear. The sound of her screaming filled the dining room. "You selfish old man!" Then the slap. The sound of the slap was amplified in the quiet room. It sounded like a gunshot. On the screen, everyone watched Brittany strike me. They watched my glasses fly off. They watched Justin sit there and do nothing. I looked at Tiffany and Chloe. Their hands were over their mouths. Marcus had lowered the camera, looking terrified. The video ended. Brittany was pale. Her hands were trembling. That is out of context," she stammered. "He provoked me. You did not see what happened before. He was being abusive." Solomon slid a file across the table. "Section 243 of the Penal Code," Solomon recited from memory. "Battery against an elder or dependent adult. Enhanced by the fact that the victim is over 65. In this state, that is a felony punishable by up to 4 years in state prison." Brittany looked at Justin. "Say something, tell them." Justin looked at the sheriff, then at me. He looked like he was about to vomit. Solomon continued. "And since we are streaming, let us talk about the fraud." He pulled out the bank records, forging a signature on a cashier check. $50,000. That is grand theft and bank fraud. Justin, that carries a minimum of 5 years. The silence at the table was total. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Brittany stood up again, knocking her wineglass over. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth, looking like blood spreading on a bandage. "This is a setup," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You old snake, you invited us here to humiliate us." "No," I said calmly, picking up my wineglass. "I invited you here to say goodbye." Sheriff Barnes stood up. He reached for the handcuffs on his belt. The metallic click of the latch opening was the loudest sound in the world. "Brittany Miller and Justin Miller," he said. "You have the right to remain silent." Brittany's friends scrambled back their chairs, falling over, desperate to get away from the blast radius. "Wait!" Brittany shrieked, backing away. "You cannot arrest me. This is my house. I own this house." I took a sip of the wine. It was rich and bold, just like I knew it would be. "Actually," I said, setting the glass down, "you do not own anything." Solomon read them the eviction clause. The dinner party was over. The justice was just beginning. The screen of the 60-inch television on the wall flickered to life. Brittany was beaming, raising her wineglass toward the screen, expecting a montage of family photos, or perhaps a digital rendering of the new nursery she planned to build on top of my wife's garden. Her friends Tiffany and Chloe leaned forward with their lips pursed, ready to coo and awe at the display of generational wealth. Marcus checked the focus on his camera, ensuring the framing captured Brittany in her best light. But there was no music. There was no slideshow of happy memories. The screen showed a high-angle black and white view of the kitchen. It was grainy but unmistakable. The timestamp in the corner read yesterday. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the cooling fan on the television. On the screen, my digital ghost sat at the kitchen table. Brittany, as digital ghost, stood over him. The audio was tinny, but every word was razor-sharp. "I will speak whatever I want." The Brittany on the screen screamed, "We take care of you. We let you live here." In the dining room, the real Brittany lowered her wineglass. Her smile wavered. She looked at me, then back at the screen. Her face went from expecting praise to sheer panic in the span of a heartbeat. She opened her mouth to speak to stop it, but the video moved too fast. On the screen, she lunged. The sound of the slap was amplified by the surround sound speakers I had installed for movie nights. It sounded like a whip cracking. It was a violent, wet sound that made everyone in the room flinch. My glasses flew across the linoleum. My head snapped back, and then the most damning part played. The silence. The absolute lack of hesitation or remorse. And Justin, my son, sitting there swirling his drink, looking at the tablecloth while his father was assaulted. The video froze on that frame. My red cheek, her raised hand. Justin is cowardice. I looked around the table. The reaction was visceral. Tiffany had covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with genuine shock. Chloe looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. These were women who thrived on gossip and drama, but this was not drama. This was violence. This was ugly. Marcus, however, did something that sealed Brittany's fate. He did not turn his camera off. He panned. He moved the lens from Brittany's pale face to the television screen, recording the evidence, and then back to her. He was live streaming. The comments section on his phone was likely exploding. Brittany's carefully curated image of the saintly caregiver was disintegrating in real time in front of thousands of strangers. Brittany stood up so fast, her chair tipped over backward, crashing onto the hardwood floor. "Turn it off!" she shrieked. Her voice was an octave higher than normal. "That is fake. That is edited. He is trying to frame me." She lunged for the remote control, but Solomon was faster. He simply placed his large hand over it. "Sit down, Mrs. Miller," Solomon said. His voice was not a shout. It was a rumble. It was the voice of a man who had commanded troops in a war zone. It brooked no argument. Brittany froze. She looked at Justin. "Do something. Tell them your father is crazy. Tell them he hit me first." Justin looked up. His face was gray. He looked at the freeze frame on the television. He saw himself on that screen. He saw the truth of what he had become. "I cannot, Britt," Justin whispered. "It is on video." Brittany turned on him. "You coward. You useless coward." Sheriff Barnes cleared his throat. It was a dry, dusty sound. "I would be careful about what you say next, Mrs. Miller. Anything you say can and will be used against you. And right now you are digging a hole straight to the county jail." Solomon opened the thick leather folder in front of him. He put on a pair of reading glasses. He took his time. He adjusted the pages. He let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. He wanted them to sweat. He wanted the reality of their situation to soak into their bones. He pulled out a document with a blue seal. "This is the deed to the Pendergast Family Trust." Solomon began. His tone was professional, clinical, and utterly devastating. "Established 10 years ago by Augustus and Martha Miller. The assets in this trust include this primary residence, the lake house property in Tahoe, and all investment accounts attached to the estate." Brittany was breathing hard, her chest heaving. "So what?" she spat. "We are the beneficiaries. We inherit it all when he dies. And since he is obviously mentally incompetent, we have power of attorney." Solomon looked over his glasses at her. He looked at her with the same expression one might use when looking at a particularly unpleasant insect. "Actually, you do not," Solomon said. "You see, Gus is not the owner. He is the trustee, and you and Justin are merely tenants at will, beneficiaries with conditions." He turned a page. The paper rustled loudly in the quiet room. Clause 4, Section C. Solomon read aloud. "We call this the Morality and Conduct Clause. It is standard in high-value trusts, but Gus insisted on very specific language." Solomon looked at the paper and read, "If at any time any beneficiary or tenant of the trust engages in criminal activity, abuse, neglect, or acts of physical violence against the trustee—" Solomon paused. He looked directly at Brittany. "All rights to inheritance, residency, and financial support are immediately and irrevocably terminated." The words hung in the air. Irrevocably terminated. Brittany blinked. She did not understand, or she refused to understand. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Solomon closed the folder. "It means, Mrs. Miller, that as of the moment your hand made contact with Gus, his face yesterday, you ceased to be a beneficiary. You are no longer in line to inherit the house. You are no longer in line to inherit the money. You are not even a tenant anymore." Solomon checked his watch. "Technically, your right to be on this property expired 24 hours ago. You are trespassing." Brittany looked around the room wildly. She looked at her friends. Tiffany and Chloe were backing away, reaching for their purses. They did not want to be accessories. They did not want to be associated with a woman who beat up old war veterans. "This is ridiculous." Brittany laughed, but it sounded like a sob. "You cannot just kick us out. We have rights. We have squatters' rights. This is my home. I picked out these curtains." Sheriff Barnes stepped forward. The floorboards creaked under his weight. "Squatters' rights do not apply when a felony has been committed, ma'am," he said. "And elder abuse is a felony." Brittany turned to me. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears that looked genuine for the first time. But they were tears of fear, not sorrow. "Gus," she pleaded. "Gus, please. It was a mistake. I was stressed. You know how hard I work. I love you, Gus. I am your daughter." I sat there cutting a piece of the Wagyu steak I had cooked to perfection. I put a piece in my mouth. It was tender, rich, and salty. I chewed slowly. I swallowed. I took a sip of the vintage wine. I looked at her. "You are not my daughter," I said softly. My daughter would never raise a hand to me, and she would never disrespect the memory of the woman who built this family. I pointed the steak knife at the door. You have 15 minutes to pack a bag. The sheriff will supervise. Whatever you can carry, you keep. Everything else stays. The furniture, the electronics, the china you bought with my credit card. It all stays. Brittany looked at Justin. Justin, say something. We are going to lose everything. Justin sat with his head in his hands. He did not look up. He was broken. But he was broken by his own choices. I looked at Marcus, who was still filming. Make sure you get this part, son, I said to the camera. This is the part where they find out that actions have consequences. Brittany screamed. It was a primal sound of pure rage. She grabbed her wineglass and threw it. It shattered against the wall behind me, spraying red wine over the family portrait she had tried to take down last week. Sheriff Barnes moved fast for a big man. He grabbed her wrist before she could grab a steak knife. He spun her around. That is enough, he growled. Brittany Miller, turn around and place your hands behind your back. The click of the handcuffs was final. It was the sound of a steel door slamming shut on a life of entitlement. Brittany began to sob loudly, wailing about how unfair it was, how she was being persecuted. I picked up my fork and took another bite of steak. It was the best meal I had eaten in years. Solomon poured himself a glass of wine. Nice vintage Gus, he said calmly, ignoring the woman being read her Miranda rights 3 feet away. It breathes well, I said. Tiffany and Chloe tried to slip out the front door. Excuse me, ladies, Solomon called out without turning around. They froze. We will need your contact information. You are witnesses to a felony. The district attorney will be in touch. They nodded, terrified, and ran out the door, leaving their friend in handcuffs. I looked at Justin. He was finally looking at me. His eyes were red. Dad, he whispered. I did not know about the clause. I know, I said. That was the test, son, and you failed. The dinner was far from over, but the appetite for lies had been completely satisfied. Now all that was left was the cleanup, and I was very good at cleaning up messes. The room seemed to shrink when Sheriff Barnes stood up. He was a mountain of a man, and in that moment he blocked out all the light from the chandelier. The badge on his belt caught the reflection of the camera lens that was still recording. He did not shout. He did not need to raise his voice. He simply walked around the table with the heavy, inevitable steps of fate itself. Brittany tried to scramble backward. Her heels slipped on the hardwood floor, and she stumbled, crashing into the sideboard where she displayed her collection of expensive imported vodka. Bottles rattled but did not break. The sound was like chattering teeth. Sheriff Barnes reached out and took hold of her wrist. His grip was firm but professional. Brittany let out a sound that was half scream and half sob. It was the sound of the spoiled child realizing for the first time that the word no actually meant something. Brittany Miller, you are under arrest for felony elder abuse under Penal Code 368. The sheriff said, his voice rumbling through her panicked shrieks. She tried to pull away. Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? Justin, tell him this is a mistake. Sheriff Barnes spun her around efficiently. He pulled her arms behind her back. Then came the sound that stopped. Everyone is heart. Click, click. The steel cuffs locked into place. It was a cold, mechanical finality. You have the right to remain silent. The sheriff continued reciting the words we have all heard on television, but never expect to hear in our own dining room. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Brittany looked at her friends. Tiffany and Chloe were pressed against the wall, clutching their designer purses like shields. They looked at Brittany not with sympathy, but with the terrified realization that her social leprosy might be contagious. Help me, Brittany begged them, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Call my lawyer, call someone. I am sorry, Brittany, Tiffany whispered. Then she turned and ran. Chloe followed her heels, clacking frantically as they fled out the front door, leaving it wide open to the cold night air. Marcus, the cameraman, was the last to leave. He gave me a quick nod, a look of strange respect on his face, and then he too vanished into the night, taking the live stream with him. The sheriff began to march Brittany toward the door. She was dead weight now, dragging her feet, sobbing uncontrollably. As she passed me, she looked down at where I sat, calm and unmoving with my steak and wine. Her eyes were full of venom. You will pay for this, Gus, she hissed. You will die alone in this house. I took a slow sip of the Cabernet. I am already alone, Brittany. I have been alone since the day you walked in. The sheriff led her out. Through the open door, I could see the flashing blue and red lights of the patrol car bouncing off the neighbors' houses. Curtains were twitching across the street. The whole neighborhood was watching the fall of the queen bee. Now it was just Justin and me. My son sat at the table, his head in his hands. He was shaking. He looked small. He looked like the little boy who used to hide behind my legs when it thundered. But there was no thunder tonight, only the storm of his own making. Dad, he whispered. His voice was cracked. I did not know she was going to hit you. I swear. I set my wine glass down. The clink of crystal against the table was sharp. You knew she was stealing from me, I said. You forged my signature, Justin. That is 5 years in prison right there. But I am not pressing charges for the money. Not yet. Justin looked up, hope flaring in his eyes. Really? You mean... I stood up. I walked over to the front door and looked out at the police car pulling away with his wife in the back seat. Then I turned to face him. I am not sending you to prison, Justin. I am sending you into the world. What, he asked, confused. The trust clause is clear, I said, pointing to the document Solomon had left on the table. You are an accessory to abuse. Your residency is terminated effective immediately. Justin stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Dad, you cannot be serious. It is nighttime. It is freezing outside. Where am I supposed to go? I do not know, I said honestly. And for the first time in 30 years, I do not care. You have a degree I paid for. You have 2 legs. Figure it out. But my clothes, my laptop, my things. Take the clothes on your back, I said, my voice hardening into concrete. Everything else was bought with my money or the money you stole from me. It stays here to cover the debt. Justin stared at me. He looked for a trace of the soft father who had bailed him out of credit card debt in college. He looked for the man who had refinanced the house to pay for his wedding. But that man was gone. That man had died the moment his son watched him get slapped and did nothing. Get out, I said. Justin looked at the open door. Then he looked at me one last time. His face twisted with a sudden ugly anger that mirrored his wife's. She was right. He spat. You are a bitter old man. You are going to rot in this big empty house. I pointed to the door. Justin turned and walked out. He did not look back. He walked down the driveway shivering in his designer shirt, his hands shoved in his pockets. I watched him turn the corner and disappear into the darkness. I stepped onto the porch. The air was crisp and smelled of fallen leaves. The sirens had faded. The street was quiet again. I closed the heavy oak door. I turned the deadbolt. Thud. Then I engaged the chain lock. Slide. Then the new digital lock I had installed this morning. Beep. Whir. Click. The house was sealed. I walked back to the dining room. The food was cold now. The half-eaten steaks sat on the plates like ruins of a battle. I picked up the bottle of wine and my glass. I walked into the living room and sat in my old leather armchair. the one Brittany had tried to throw away 3 times. I poured another glass. The red liquid caught the light. I took a drink. It tasted like victory. It tasted like peace. The parasite had been removed. The infection was gone. I was the master of my castle again. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath that I felt I had been holding for months. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. Or so I thought. I reached for the remote to turn off the TV but stopped. My phone buzzed on the side table. Then it buzzed again. And again. Within seconds, it was vibrating continuously, dancing across the wood surface like an angry hornet. I picked it up. Notifications were flooding in. Not from friends. From strangers. Hundreds of them. I opened the first one. It was a link to a video. Brittany had not just been crying in the back of the police car. She had posted a video before the sheriff took her phone. It was a close-up of her tear-stained face framed by the metal cage of the patrol car. "He hit me first," she sobbed into the camera. "My father-in-law is a monster. The video he showed was deep fake. He has been abusing me for months. Please, someone help me," he bribed the sheriff. The video already had 50,000 likes. The comments were rolling in like a tidal wave of hate. "Find the old man. Burn his house down. Justice for Brittany." I looked at the wine glass in my hand. The surface of the liquid was trembling. The silence in the house suddenly felt less like peace and more like the eye of a hurricane. I thought I had won the war. But as I watched the view count on her lie tick upward, I realized the battle had just moved to a new battlefield. One where truth did not matter as much as tears. I set the glass down. I did not drink. I needed a clear head. The night was young and the wolves were gathering at the gate. The silence in the house did not last long. It was a fragile thing like thin ice over a deep river, and Brittany shattered it before the sun even came up. I had fallen asleep in my armchair with the empty wine glass on the side table. My phone had been buzzing intermittently through the night, but I had ignored it, thinking it was just the aftershocks of the evening. I was wrong. It was not an aftershock. It was the tsunami. I woke up to the sound of pounding on my front door. It was not the police and it was not a guest. It was a frantic, heavy hammering. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept behind the umbrella stand and looked through the peephole. It was Solomon. He looked like he had not slept in a week. I opened the door and the morning air hit me. It was cold and damp. Solomon walked in without waiting for an invitation. He did not say hello. He just held up his tablet. "She made bail, Gus," he said. His voice was grim. "Her mother put up the house in Florida. She walked out of county lockup 2 hours ago." I rubbed my face, feeling the stubble on my chin. "So what? She is out pending trial. She cannot come near me. The restraining order is in effect." Solomon shook his head. He placed the tablet on the coffee table. "She does not need to come near you physically to hurt you, Gus. She has a weapon we did not account for. She has an audience." He tapped the screen. I looked down. It was a video posted on her main social media account. The timestamp showed it had been uploaded 45 minutes after she was released. The view count was already at 300,000. The video was a masterclass in manipulation. Brittany was sitting on a bed in what looked like a cheap motel room. She was wearing a gray hoodie 2 sizes too big for her, making her look small and vulnerable. Her makeup was gone. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked like a broken child. "Hey guys," she whispered into the camera. Her voice cracked perfectly. "I know you saw the live stream last night. I know how bad it looked. But please, you have to listen to me. Context is everything." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "I have been living in a nightmare for 6 months. My father-in-law, Gus, He is not who you think he is. He is not a sweet old man. He is a predator. My stomach dropped. I felt the blood drain from my face. She continued. He has been obsessed with me since I moved in. He makes comments about my body. He walks into my room without knocking. He installed cameras in the house not for security but to watch me, to spy on me. On the screen, she held up a grainy photo of the smoke detector camera I had used to catch her. I found this in the kitchen. She sobbed. He was filming me, and yesterday when I confronted him about it, he snapped. He cornered me in the dining room. He told me that if I did not do what he wanted, he would throw us out on the street. I was terrified. When I slapped him, it was not assault. It was self-defense. I was just trying to get away from him. Then came the editing. She had taken the footage from the dinner, the footage Marcus had filmed, and she had cut it. She removed the part where Solomon read the trust clause. She removed the part about the stolen money. She only kept the moment where I told the sheriff to arrest her. Without the context, I looked cold. I looked cruel. I looked like a tyrant destroying a young woman's life. Please help me, she begged the camera. We are homeless. We have nothing. He has all the money. He has the power. Please do not let him get away with this. The video ended. I sat back in my chair feeling like I had been punched in the gut. It was a lie. A monstrous, disgusting lie. But it was a lie told by a pretty crying woman to a world that loved a victim. Read the comments, Solomon said softly. I scrolled down. This makes me sick. I hope that old man rots. We know where he lives. Let us pay him a visit. Justice for Brittany. He is a pervert. Protect women at all costs. There were thousands of them. A digital mob fueled by self-righteousness and half-truths. Solomon closed the tablet cover. We are already drafting a defamation lawsuit, Gus. We will issue a cease and desist. But the damage is done. The court of public opinion does not require evidence. It only requires outrage. I stood up and walked to the window. The street was quiet, but it felt different now. It felt like eyes were watching me from every parked car and every hedge. I spent my life building things, Solomon, I said. I built this house. I built my reputation. And she tore it all down in 3 minutes with a cell phone. We will fight this, Solomon said. But you need to leave. Go to a hotel. Go to the cabin. It is not safe here. I turned to him. I gripped the back of the armchair, my knuckles turning white. No. I ran from nothing in Vietnam, and I am not running from a teenager with a TikTok account. This is my house. Solomon sighed. I knew you would say that. I called Barnes. He is sending a patrol car to sit outside, but he cannot stay forever. The day passed in a blur of anxiety. My phone did not stop ringing. I had to unplug the landline because the death threats were coming every 5 minutes. Voices I did not recognize, young, angry voices, screaming obscenities, telling me I was a monster, telling me I should kill myself before they did it for me. I closed the blinds. I locked the doors. I sat in the dark, feeling the walls closing in. The house I loved, the sanctuary I had defended, was now a fortress under siege. Night fell heavy and black. The patrol car sat at the end of the driveway, its lights off a silent sentinel. But around 9 o'clock, the sheriff's radio crackled and the car sped off. A priority call somewhere else. I was alone. 20 minutes later, the first egg hit the window. It sounded like a gunshot. Splat. I jumped. Yellow yolk ran down the glass of the living room window. Then another. And another. A barrage of eggs raining down on the siding. I grabbed the bat and went to the door. I looked through the peephole. There were about a dozen of them. Kids, teenagers in hoodies and masks. They were standing on my lawn, trampling the flower beds Martha had planted. They were holding phones up, filming themselves, laughing, jeering. "Come out, you pervert," one of them yelled. I unlocked the deadbolt. My hand was shaking with rage. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to scream the truth at them. I wanted to show them the bank records, the unedited video. But I knew it would not matter. To them, I was not a person. I was content. I was a villain in the movie they were starring in. Then came the sound of breaking glass. A rock sailed through the front bay window, shattering the pane. Shards of glass sprayed across the hardwood floor, sparkling like diamonds in the streetlight. A cold wind rushed in, carrying the sounds of the mob. I stepped back, crunching on the glass. "Hey!" a voice shouted from outside. It was a neighbor, Mr. Henderson, from across the street. "Get out of here, I am calling the cops." The kids scattered like cockroaches when the light turns on. They ran to their cars, engines revving, tires squealing, leaving skid marks on the asphalt. I opened the door. The cool night air smelled of sulfur and raw eggs. I stepped out onto the porch. My house looked like a war zone. Sticky yellow slime coated the white siding. Toilet paper hung from the oak tree like ghostly streamers. But it was the front door that broke my heart. Someone had used red spray paint. Across the beautiful wood grain, I had sanded and stained myself. They had written one word in jagged, dripping letters. Predator. I stared at the word. It burned into my retinas. This was worse than the slap. The slap was physical pain. This was spiritual murder. They had taken my name and twisted it into something filthy. Mr. Henderson came running over. "Gus, are you okay?" "My God, look at this mess." I did not answer. I could not speak. I felt a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart and everything to do with my soul. "They believe her," I whispered. "They actually believe her." Mr. Henderson looked at the graffiti and looked away, embarrassed. "Look, Gus, maybe you should go stay somewhere else for a while, just until this blows over. People are talking." I looked at my neighbor of 20 years. I saw the doubt in his eyes. He had known me for 2 decades, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. The lie was taking root. Even he was wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was some truth to the girl's story. That hurt more than the rock. I turned around and walked back into my house. I stepped over the broken glass. I did not clean it up. I sat down in the middle of the living room floor, bat in my hand, watching the wind blow the curtains through the broken window. Brittany wanted a war. She wanted to destroy me. She thought she could shame me into submission. She thought that if she threw enough mud, some of it would stick, and I would sign the checks just to make it stop. She underestimated me. I looked at the shattered window. I looked at the darkness outside. I picked up my phone. I did not look at the hate comments. I opened my email. I composed a message to Solomon. Subject: the nuclear option. Body: release the medical records. Release the full financial audit. And call the FBI. We are not suing for defamation anymore, Solomon. We are filing for RICO charges. She brought a mob to my house. I am bringing the federal government to hers. I hit send. Let them throw their eggs. Let them paint their lies. I was a builder. I knew how to scrape away the rot. And tomorrow I was going to strip this lie down to the studs, no matter who got hurt in the demolition. The sun had barely risen over the shattered glass in my living room when the second blow landed. This one did not come from a rock or an egg. It came on official county letterhead delivered by 2 deputies I did not know. They were young men with crisp uniforms and faces that were trying too hard to look neutral. They did not look me in the eye. They looked at the clipboard in their hands. "Mr. Miller," the taller one said, "we are serving you with a temporary restraining order issued by Judge Harrison this morning." I stood in my doorway holding a broom. I had been trying to sweep up the glass. I looked at the paper. It was heavy. It felt like lead in my hand. "What is this?" I asked. My voice was hoarse from a night of not speaking. The deputy cleared his throat. "It is an ex parte order based on a credible threat of domestic violence. The petitioner, Brittany Miller, alleges that she fears for her safety and the safety of her husband due to your erratic and violent behavior." I laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound that hurt my throat. My violent behavior. She is the one who slapped me. She is the one who brought a mob to my lawn. That is for the court to decide, sir. The deputy said, his hand resting instinctively near his belt. Right now, the order states you must vacate the premises immediately. You are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of the petitioner or the residence located at this address. I stared at him. The words did not make sense. This address. My address. The house where I poured the concrete foundation in 1982. The house where I carried Martha over the threshold. The house where I raised the son who was now hiding behind his wife lies. You are kicking me out of my own home, I asked. Based on what a video she edited on her phone, sir, we are just enforcing the order. You have 15 minutes to gather essential personal items. Medicine, a change of clothes. We will escort you off the property. 15 minutes. 40 years of life reduced to a 15-minute grab and go. I turned and walked into the house. The deputies followed me. They walked close enough to touch me as if I might suddenly pull a weapon and start shooting. I walked past the kitchen where I had cooked that steak dinner. It felt like a lifetime ago. I walked into my bedroom, the guest bedroom. I grabbed my duffel bag. I threw in my blood pressure medication. I threw in 3 shirts and a pair of work boots. I looked at the picture of Martha on the nightstand. I wanted to take it, but the glass frame was heavy and my hands were shaking so bad I was afraid I would drop it. I left her there. I left her watching this humiliation. I walked out to my truck. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Higgins next door was peering through her blinds. The mailman stopped his truck to look. I was a spectacle. I was the old man being thrown out by the police. In the court of public opinion, the uniform confirms the guilt. If the cops are removing him, he must have done something wrong. That is how the world thinks. I climbed into my Ford. The cab smelled of old coffee and sawdust. It was the only familiar smell left in my world. "Where will you be staying, sir?" the deputy asked. "We need an address for the court." "I do not know," I said. I started the engine. I drove away. I did not look back at the house. I could not bear to see it standing there occupied by the ghosts of my failures. I drove for an hour. I drove past the nice hotels downtown. I could afford them, but I did not belong there. Not looking like this. Unshaven. Wearing yesterday clothes. Carrying the stench of defeat. I ended up at the Starlight Motel on the edge of the industrial district. It was a place where truckers stopped for a few hours of sleep and where people who did not want to be found rented rooms by the week. The sign outside was missing the letter L, so it just read Dar Ite. The clerk was behind bulletproof glass. He did not ask for ID. He just asked for cash. $60 a night. No refunds. No loud music. No guests after 10. I took the key. It was attached to a large green plastic diamond. Room 104. The room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner that tried and failed to mask the scent of mildew. The carpet was sticky. The bedspread was a polyester floral pattern that looked like it had been there since the 70s. I threw my bag on the bed. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light coming through the heavy curtains. I sat down on the edge of the mattress. The springs groaned under my weight. This was my life now. I was a millionaire on paper. I owned assets. I had a trust fund. I had a perfect credit score. And yet here I was sitting in a room that smelled like despair, listening to the sound of sirens passing by on the highway. The injustice of it burned in my chest like a coal that would not go out. How was this possible? How could the system be so easily weaponized? I had followed the rules. I had worked hard. I had paid my taxes. I had raised my family. And all it took was one woman with no conscience and a smartphone to strip me of my home, my dignity, and my peace. I felt a tear run down my cheek. I angrily wiped it away. I was not going to cry for myself. Crying was for victims, and I refused to be a victim. My phone buzzed. It was Solomon. I heard about the order, Gus. I am sorry. They kicked me out, Solomon, I said. My voice sounded small in the empty room. It is a standard tactic, Gus. She filed for an emergency protective order. Judges sign them automatically to err on the side of caution. It buys her time. She wants you to break. She wants you to violate the order so she can send you to jail for real. She is winning, Solomon. She is living in my house. She is probably sleeping in my bed right now. She is not winning, Gus. She is digging. Every lie she tells is another shovel of dirt. We just have to wait for the hearing. When is the hearing? 2 weeks. The courts are backed up. 2 weeks. I looked around the room. 2 weeks of listening to the couple fighting in the room next door. 2 weeks of eating takeout food. 2 weeks of being a fugitive in my own city. I hung up the phone. I lay back on the bed staring at the water stain on the ceiling. It looked like a map of a country that did not exist. I felt a surge of helplessness that I had not felt since I was a young recruit in the jungle. The feeling that you are surrounded by an enemy you cannot see, and the only thing protecting you is luck. But then I remembered something. I survived the jungle. I survived the recession of 2008. I survived the death of my wife. Brittany thought that by taking my house, she was taking my power. She did not understand construction. The house is just the shell. The power is in the foundation. And my foundation was built on 40 years of grit. Let her have the house for 2 weeks. Let her play pretend queen in her stolen castle. I closed my eyes. I listened to the hum of the broken air conditioner. It was a lonely sound. But in that loneliness, I found a spark of something dangerous. If I was going to be the villain in her story, I might as well play the part. But I would not be the villain who hurts women. I would be the villain who exposes the truth. I reached into my bag and pulled out my tablet. I connected to the spotty motel Wi-Fi. I opened the folder marked Evidence. Solomon said to wait for the hearing. But Solomon was a lawyer. He played by the rules of the court. I was a contractor. And sometimes when the blueprint does not work, you have to improvise. I opened a new browser window. I typed in the address of the FBI Cybercrime Division. 2 weeks in a motel was a long time. Plenty of time to do some digging of my own. Plenty of time to find out exactly where Brittany's previous husbands had disappeared to. The walls of the motel room were thin, but my resolve was thick as concrete. I turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. The neon sign outside flickered pink against the curtains. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was the sound of a countdown, and Brittany Miller did not even know the timer had started. The television in the motel room was an old boxy model that hummed almost as loudly as the air conditioner. The picture was fuzzy and the colors were washed out, making everyone look like they had jaundice, but the sound was clear enough. Too clear. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress holding a cup of lukewarm coffee from the lobby and watched the morning news show. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Family Crisis or Elder Abuse." And there he was. My son Justin was sitting on a beige couch in the studio. He was wearing a soft blue cashmere sweater. I recognized it immediately because I had bought it for him last Christmas. He looked tired. He looked sad. He looked like the perfect grieving son who was trying to hold his world together. The interviewer, a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, leaned in with an expression of practiced sympathy. "Justin, thank you for being here," she said softly. "I know your wife Brittany is too traumatized to speak right now, but there are a lot of questions about the video circulating online. Your father claims he was assaulted. He claims he was kicked out of his own home. What is really going on?" Justin took a deep breath. He looked down at his hands, then up at the camera. He had practiced this, I could tell. He had the same look on his face he used to have when he broke a window playing baseball and tried to tell me a bird flew into it. "It is heartbreaking," Justin said, his voice trembling just enough to sound authentic. "My father, Gus, he is a hero. He worked hard all his life. But in the last year, things have changed. We tried to keep it private out of respect for him, but we cannot anymore." He paused for effect. "My father has been diagnosed with early-onset dementia and severe paranoia." I dropped the coffee cup. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, splashing brown liquid over my boots, but I did not move. I stared at the screen, my mouth open. Dementia. The interviewer asked, her eyes widening. "Yes." Justin continued, wiping a fake tear from the corner of his eye. "It started small. Forgetting keys, forgetting names. But then he started imagining things. He started thinking people were stealing from him. He became obsessed with security, installing cameras everywhere because he thought there were spies in the house." I gripped the edge of the bedsheet so hard my knuckles turned white. He was using the evidence I had gathered against me. He was twisting my vigilance into insanity. "And the slap?" the interviewer asked. "The video looks very violent, Justin." Justin shook his head sadly. "That is the tragedy of it. That video is edited. What you do not see is the 5 minutes before that, where he was screaming at Brittany. He did not know who she was. He thought she was an intruder. He lunged at her. Brittany was terrified. She put her hand up to block him, to push him away, and that is when the contact happened. It was self-defense, plain and simple. But in his confused mind, he thinks we attacked him. I felt a physical pain in my chest that was sharper than any heart attack. This was not just a lie. This was an assassination. He was murdering my character. He was stripping away my agency. By claiming I was senile, he was invalidating every word I said, every piece of proof I had. Who listens to a crazy old man? The interviewer reached out and touched Justin's hand. "That must be so difficult for you and your wife. To care for him and then be accused of such terrible things. It is a nightmare," Justin said, looking directly into the lens. "Directly at me. We love him. We just want him to get help. But he refuses treatment. He ran away yesterday. We are so worried about him. If anyone sees him, please tell him to come home. We are not angry. We just want him safe." I stood up and walked to the TV. I wanted to punch the screen. I wanted to shatter that lying face into a million pieces. "You gutless worm," I whispered. He was my flesh and blood. I had changed his diapers. I had paid for his college. I had bailed him out of debt 3 times. And now, to save his own skin and to protect the woman who was ruining him, he was declaring me mentally incompetent on national television. This was the masterstroke. Brittany was the hammer, but Justin was the dagger. Brittany attacked me from the front, but Justin had snuck up behind me and cut my throat. I turned off the TV. The room went silent, but Justin's voice echoed in my head. Dementia. Paranoia. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I looked tired. I had not shaved in 2 days. My eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. To the outside world, I probably did look like a crazy old man. If I walked into a police station right now ranting about conspiracies and forged checks, they would just call Justin to come pick me up. They would pat me on the head and say it was okay, Grandpa let us get you your meds. I felt a wave of nausea. I leaned over the sink, splashing cold water on my face. They had checkmated me. Or so they thought. Justin had made one critical mistake. He said I refused treatment. He said I had a diagnosis. I grabbed my towel and dried my face. The roughness of the fabric felt grounding. If I had a diagnosis, there would be a medical record. And if there was no medical record, then Justin was lying about a medical condition to manipulate a legal situation. I walked back into the bedroom and picked up my tablet. My hands were shaking, not from age but from a cold fury that was freezing my veins into ice. "You want to play the medical card, son?" I said to the empty room. "Fine. Let us talk about medical history." I logged into my healthcare provider portal. I downloaded my full medical history for the last 10 years, every checkup, every blood test, and most importantly, the cognitive assessment I had taken voluntarily 6 months ago when I renewed my pilot license. Passed with flying colors. No signs of cognitive decline. I saved the file. Then I opened a new email draft to Solomon. But I did not stop there. Justin had mentioned paranoia. He said I imagined people stealing from me. I opened the folder with the bank scans, the forged check for $50,000. If I was imagining things, then the bank was hallucinating too. I sat down at the wobbly desk in the corner of the room. I was done being the victim. I was done being the father. The father died the moment Justin looked at that camera and called me crazy. Now I was just a plaintiff. I opened a search engine and typed in a name I had been avoiding. Dr. Eris Thorne, forensic psychiatrist. Solomon had mentioned him once. A man who could testify in court that a person was sane. A man whose word was ironclad. I dialed the number. "Hello," I said, when the receptionist answered. "My name is Augustus Miller. My son just went on television and said I have dementia. I would like to book an emergency evaluation. Today. And I want it recorded." I hung up the phone. I looked at the black screen of the TV. "You want to paint a picture of a crazy old man, Justin?" I whispered. "Be careful. Because this crazy old man knows where all the skeletons are buried, including the ones you think you hid in your closet." I grabbed my jacket. I was leaving the motel. Not to go home, but to go to war. The time for defense was over. It was time to go on the offensive. And I was going to start by proving that the only thing wrong with my mind was that I had trusted the wrong people for too long. The Starlight Motel was a place where hope went to die, but I was not dead yet. Justin had called me paranoid on national television. He had called me confused. But in the core, they taught us that paranoia is just a heightened state of awareness, and confusion is what happens before you find your target. I packed my duffel bag, not with clothes, but with purpose. I checked out of room 104, leaving the key on the scratched dresser. I did not go to a doctor, and I did not go to the police station. I went to the one place where loyalty was not a word printed on a greeting card, but a blood oath. I drove my truck to the outskirts of the city, to a small diner with a neon sign that buzzed louder than the traffic on the interstate. It was called The Bunker. It was a place where old men drank coffee that tasted like battery acid and talked about wars that the rest of the world had forgotten. I walked in. The bell above the door jingled. The smell of frying bacon and stale cigarette smoke hit me like a warm hug. Sitting in the back booth were 3 men. They were gray. They were wrinkled. To the young people passing by, they looked like grandfathers waiting for a bingo game. But I knew better. I knew that Dutch could find a needle in a haystack if the needle was using a burner phone. I knew that Smitty could hack into a government server using a laptop from 1998. And I knew that Big Mike could move things that did not want to be moved. They saw me walk in. They saw the bags under my eyes and the stubble on my chin. They did not ask how I was doing. They did not offer pity. Dutch simply slid a mug of black coffee across the chipped Formica table. "Sit down, Gus," Dutch said. "We saw the news." I sat down. The vinyl seat was cracked and taped over with duct tape. It felt more comfortable than the silk chairs in my own dining room. She says I am crazy, I said, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. She says I have dementia. Smitty tapped away on a thick, rugged laptop that looked like it had survived a bomb blast. We know what she says, Gus. Smitty mumbled without looking up. The question is, who is she really? People do not just wake up one day and become professional con artists. That takes practice. That takes a resume. We started digging the moment the story broke. Big Mike added, Solomon sent over the files you gathered, the bank records, the trust fund. But we went deeper. We went off the grid. Dutch pulled a manila folder from his leather jacket. He opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance shots, mugshots, marriage certificates. Brittany Miller does not exist, Dutch said, or at least she did not exist 5 years ago. Her birth name is Brenda Higgins. I looked at the photo. It was younger. Her hair was brown, not blonde. She had less makeup, but the eyes were the same. Cold, calculating, hungry. She changed her name legally in Arizona 4 years ago. Dutch continued. Then she moved to Nevada and became Bella Hart. Then she moved here and became Brittany. Why the name changes, I asked. Smitty turned his laptop around. Because she leaves a trail of bodies, Gus. Financial bodies. He pointed to a news article on the screen. The headline read, Local business owner loses everything in arson fire. The photo showed a man standing in front of a burned-out warehouse. Beside him, holding his hand and looking devastated, was a woman with brown hair. Brenda Higgins. That is husband number 1, Smitty said. Mark Davidson, Phoenix, Arizona. He owned a successful logistics company. He married Brenda after knowing her for 3 months. 6 months later, he signed over 40% of the company to her for tax purposes. 2 weeks after that, the warehouse burned down. Insurance fraud investigation was inconclusive. Brenda divorced him, took her share of the insurance payout, and left Mark with the debt. He is currently living in a trailer park in Mesa. My stomach churned. It was the same playbook. Rush the intimacy. Get the assets. Destroy the victim. Husband number 2. Smitty clicked the next tab. Nevada. The screen showed an obituary. David Thorne, age 45. Died in a single vehicle accident. David was a real estate developer in Reno, Dutch explained. He married Bella Hart, a whirlwind romance. He put her on the deed to his rental properties. 3 months later, his brakes failed on a mountain road. Police ruled it an accidental mechanical failure. Bella inherited the properties, sold them for cash within a month, and vanished. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This was not just greed. This was evil. She was a black widow who did not always kill her prey, but she always sucked them dry. And then there is number 3, Big Mike said, leaning forward. A guy named Thomas in Texas. He did not marry her. He was just engaged. He was an older guy. Like you, Gus. He had a ranch. What happened to him, I asked. He is currently in a psychiatric facility in Austin, Mike said grimly. She gaslit him, moved things around in his house, drugged his food, convinced his family he was losing his mind. By the time they committed him, she had power of attorney. She sold the livestock, she sold the land, and she left him rotting in a padded room. I stared at the photos of these men. I saw myself in their faces. Mark, David, Thomas. We were not just victims, we were a type. She hunted men who were proud men, who were providers men, who thought they could protect a woman. She used our own instincts against us. She is doing the Texas play on me, I whispered. The dementia, the paranoia. She is trying to commit me so she can take the trust. Exactly, Dutch said, closing the folder. She is not improvising, Gus. She is following a script, and she has gotten away with it 3 times because she moves. She changes her name. She changes her face. And she picks victims who are too ashamed to fight back. I looked at my friends. I looked at these old soldiers who had gray hair and bad knees, but who had never left a man behind. She made a mistake this time, I said. What is that? Smitty asked. She picked a target with the fire team. I stood up. The coffee was cold, but my blood was hot. We have the names, I said. Mark in Arizona, Thomas in Texas, and we need to find out if David has any family who suspected foul play. I am already on it, Dutch said, pulling out his phone. I found Mark. He is bitter and he is broke, but he is willing to talk. He recognized her picture immediately. He wants blood, Gus. Get him here, I said. Get all of them here. Or get their statements. We are not just going to win a restraining order hearing. We are going to build a RICO case. We are going to prove a pattern of racketeering and fraud that crosses state lines. That brings in the feds. Solomon walked into the diner then. He was wearing his suit, but he looked ready for a fight. He saw the folder on the table. He saw the look on our faces. You found something, Solomon said. It was not a question. We found everything. I said, handing him the file. She is a professional, Solomon. 3 husbands, 3 states, 3 fortunes stolen. Solomon flipped through the pages, his lawyer eyes scanning the evidence. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. This changes everything, he said. This is not a domestic dispute anymore. This is a serial predator. If we can get these men to testify or even just sign affidavits, we destroy her credibility completely. The judge will not just lift the restraining order, he will issue a warrant. I looked out the window of the diner. The sun was shining, but I was thinking about the storm that was coming for Brittany, or Brenda, or Bella. Whatever she called herself, she was about to learn that you can change your name, but you cannot outrun your past, especially not when you have a unit of Marines tracking your footprints. Let us get to work, I said. I want this wrapped up before my son realizes he is married to a monster, or before he becomes husband number 4 in the obituary column. We ordered more coffee. We opened the laptops. The diner became our command center. We were not young anymore. We could not run fast and we could not jump high. But we had patience. We had discipline. And we had the absolute certainty that we were on the right side of history. The hunt was on, and the predator was about to become the prey. The numbers on the computer screen were not just digits. They were the coordinates of a crime scene. We were back in Solomon's office. It was late. The city lights outside were a blur of neon, but inside the room the only light came from the glow of the monitor reflecting off Solomon's glasses. We had the bank records. We had the forged check. But something did not add up. Justin had claimed on television that they were in debt because of a Ponzi scheme. He said they lost everything. But when you lose money in a scam, that money disappears into someone else's pocket. It does not leave a trail. Solomon tapped the screen with a pen. Look at this, Gus, he said. The check for $50,000 was made out to Crypto Future Holdings. I ran a search on that entity. It is not an investment firm. It is a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. He clicked a few keys and another window popped up. And look who the registered agent is. A lawyer in Panama named Carlos Mendez. I leaned in closer. My eyes were tired, but I forced them to focus. Who is Carlos Mendez? Solomon smiled a cold, shark-like smile. He is not just a lawyer. He is a specialist in asset protection for high-net-worth individuals who want to disappear. I have crossed paths with his firm before. They do not handle failed investments. They handle exit strategies. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. She did not lose the money, I whispered. She stole it. Exactly, Solomon said, leaning back in his chair. The story about the bad investment is a cover. She is not drowning in debt, Gus. She is building an ark. She is funneling every cent she can steal from you and Justin into an offshore account that only she can access. I felt a wave of nausea. My son was going on national television crying about how they were broke. He was humiliating himself and destroying me to protect a woman who was actively robbing him blind. She was going to sell my house, take the millions, and hop on a plane, leaving Justin behind to face the IRS and the fraud charges. She is going to run, I said. Solomon nodded. As soon as that house is sold, she is gone. And she is taking your legacy with her. We need to stop her, I said, standing up. We need to freeze that account. We cannot, Solomon said. Not without proof that the shell company belongs to her. Right now it is just a name on a screen. We need a link. We need someone who knows how she operates. I looked at the folder Dutch had given me. The photos of the ex-husbands. Mark Davidson, the man in Arizona who lost his business in a fire. I know who can give us the link, I said, grabbing my keys. Pack a bag, Solomon. We are going to Arizona. The drive was long and silent. We took my truck because I did not want to be on a flight manifest. We drove through the night, watching the landscape change from city sprawl to empty desert. The cactus skeletons stood like sentinels in the moonlight. We arrived in Mesa, Arizona, just as the sun was baking the asphalt. The address Dutch found was for the sun-bleached Mobile Home Park. It was a place where dreams went to die in the heat. The trailers were rusted. The yards were filled with broken toys and engine parts. It smelled of dust and despair. We found Lot 42 at the end of a gravel road. The trailer was beige with peeling paint. A wooden ramp had been built over the rotting stairs leading to the front door. I knocked. The door rattled in its frame. "Go away," a voice rasped from inside. "I do not have any money, and I do not want any Bibles." "Mr. Davidson," I called out. "My name is Gus Miller. I am not selling anything. I am here to talk about Brenda Higgins, or as I know her, Brittany Miller." There was a long silence. Then I heard the sound of rubber wheels on linoleum. The door cracked open. The man sitting in the wheelchair looked 20 years older than his age. His face was scarred on one side, the skin shiny and tight from burn grafts. His hands were twisted. He looked at me with eyes that had seen hell and decided to stay there. "You said Brenda," he asked. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "She is my daughter-in-law," I said. "And she is trying to do to me what she did to you." He looked at Solomon, then back at me. He saw the desperation in my eyes. He saw the soldier in me recognizing the soldier in him. He rolled his wheelchair back. "Come in," he said. "But leave the door open. The air conditioner is broken and it smells like dead rats in here." The inside of the trailer was clean but sparse. A single bed, a hot plate, a television. This was all that was left of a man who once owned a logistics empire. Mark Davidson poured us water from a plastic jug. His hands shook as he held the cups. "I saw her on the news," Mark said. "I saw what she said about you. That you are crazy. That you are dangerous." "She is good," I said. "She is the devil." Mark corrected me. "When I met her, she was the sweetest thing I had ever seen. She listened to me. She made me feel like a king. I thought I was the luckiest man in Arizona." He took a sip of water and grimaced. "She convinced me to put the warehouse in her name. She said it would protect the assets from lawsuits. She said she was looking out for our future. And then the fire." Solomon said gently. Mark nodded. I was in the office late that night. I usually went home early, but she asked me to stay and check some inventory. The explosion happened in the back. The fire doors were locked from the outside. I barely made it out. He touched his scarred face. I spent 6 months in a burn unit in a coma. When I woke up, she was gone. The insurance money was gone. The police said the evidence pointed to faulty wiring. But I know she locked those doors. He looked at me. She tried to kill me, Gus. She will kill you too if you get between her and the money. We know she is moving money offshore, Solomon said. We found a shell company called Crypto Future Holdings. Does that sound familiar? Mark laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. Crypto Future, no. Back then it was called Phoenix Logistics Ventures. But the lawyer was the same. Carlos Mendez. Solomon sat up straight. You knew about Mendez. Mark wheeled himself over to a loose floorboard under his bed. He pried it up with a screwdriver. Beneath the floor was a small fireproof lockbox. She thought she burned everything. Mark said, pulling out the box. She thought the fire took all the records. But I kept a backup server at home. She wiped the computers at the office, but she forgot about the cloud sync on my personal laptop. He opened the box. Inside was a black external hard drive. I spent 5 years trying to get the police to look at this, Mark said, handing me the drive. They said it was circumstantial. They said I was a bitter ex-husband trying to frame an innocent widow. They did not want to do the work. What is on this? I asked, holding the drive like it was a holy relic. Everything, Mark said. Emails between her and Mendez, wire transfer receipts, and a scanned copy of her passport. Not Brenda Higgins, not Brittany Miller, her real passport, the one she uses for the accounts. He looked me in the eye. Her name is not Brenda. It is Elena Petrova. She is not even American. She is a Russian national who overstayed her visa 10 years ago. If you give this to the FBI, she goes away for a long time. Not just for fraud, but for espionage and identity theft. I held the hard drive tight. This was it. This was the silver bullet. Why do you have this? Solomon asked. Why did you not destroy it? Because I was waiting, Mark said softly. I was waiting for someone like you, someone who had the fight left in him. He looked at his ruined hands. I cannot fight her, Gus. I am tired. I am broken. But you look like you are ready to burn the world down to get the truth. I stood up. I reached out and shook his scarred hand. I am going to finish this, Mark. I promise you. You will get your justice. Mark smiled. It was a sad, crooked smile. I do not want justice, Gus. I just want to know that she can never hurt anyone else again. Go get her. We walked out of the trailer into the blinding Arizona sun. The heat was oppressive, but I felt cold and focused. We have her, Solomon said as we got into the truck. We have the link. We have the alias. We have the lawyer. We have more than that. I said, starting the engine. We have the motive, and we have the witness. I looked back at the trailer. She left him to die in a fire, Solomon. She locked the doors. I gripped the steering wheel. She is not going to get the chance to strike a match in my house. We drove back toward the city. The hard drive sat on the dashboard. It was small, black, and silent. But inside that plastic case was the end of Brittany Miller. The Ponzi scheme was a lie. The debt was a lie. The only truth was the greed. And now we had the receipt. I picked up my phone. I dialed Dutch. Get the boys ready, I said. We are coming home, and we are bringing the cavalry. The hard drive Mark Davidson gave me sat on the table at the bunker like a loaded gun. It was small and cold and black, but it held enough explosive power to level a city block, or in this case, to level the life of the woman living in my house. Solomon sat across from me. He had his laptop open, and he was typing with the speed of a concert pianist. Beside him, Dutch was sorting through a stack of physical papers. Insurance reports from Phoenix. Police reports from Nevada. Medical records from Texas. We were not in a courtroom. There was no judge in a black robe. There was no jury of 12 peers. But make no mistake, this was a trial, and the verdict had already been reached. "We are not going to civil court with this, Gus," Solomon said without stopping his typing. "The restraining order hearing is in 2 weeks. That is too long. If we wait, she will drain the accounts and disappear. She will be on a plane to a non-extradition country before the bailiff says all rise." I took a sip of my coffee. It was lukewarm, but I did not care. "So we go higher," I said. Solomon stopped typing. He turned the laptop screen toward me. "This is the intake portal for the FBI White Collar Crimes Division. And this," he opened another tab, "is the whistleblower portal for the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit." He pointed to the stack of files. "Civil court is about damages, Gus. It is about who owes who money. It is a gentleman is game. But federal court, that is about freedom. When the FBI knocks on your door, they do not ask for a settlement. They put you in chains." I looked at the screen. I looked at the evidence we had gathered. It was a map of destruction, a timeline of ruin. "Let us upload it," I said. "All of it." We spent the next 3 hours digitizing the sins of Brittany Miller, or Elena Petrova, or whatever name she would whisper to her cellmate in federal prison. We started with the identity theft. The scanned passport from the hard drive proved she was a Russian national using a stolen American identity. That alone was a deportation offense. But we were just getting started. Next came the wire fraud. We uploaded the spreadsheets showing the transfers from Marca's logistics company to her shell accounts. We linked them to the $50,000 she had stolen from me. It showed a pattern, a clear, undeniable pattern of racketeering. Then came the arson and the insurance fraud. We uploaded Marca's affidavit. We uploaded the fire marshal report that had been inconclusive at the time, but now, with the context of the theft, looked a lot like attempted murder. And finally, the cherry on top, the IRS. Solomon smiled as he attached the files regarding Crypto Future Holdings. "You know, Gus," he said, "they say Al Capone killed 33 men, but the police could never pin a murder on him." "Do you know how they caught him taxes?" I said. "Exactly," Solomon said, hitting the upload button. "You can steal from your husband. You can steal from your business partner. But you never steal from Uncle Sam. She moved millions of dollars offshore without declaring a cent. The IRS does not care about her sob story. They do not care about her crying on TikTok. They only care about the math. And her math does not add up." I watched the progress bar on the screen. It was a slow green line creeping across the monitor. 20%, 50%, 90%. Upload complete. A reference number appeared on the screen. It was a long string of letters and numbers. That string was the noose around her neck. "We are not done yet," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out 3 thick manila envelopes. I had made copies of everything. Hard copies. One for the local field office of the FBI, one for the district attorney, and one for the state insurance commissioner. I picked up a pen. My hand was steady. I wrote the addresses in block letters. The ink flowed onto the paper, dark and permanent. Solomon called a courier service. "Priority overnight," he told the dispatcher. "Signature required." When the courier arrived, a young kid in a uniform who had no idea he was carrying a nuclear warhead, I handed him the envelopes. Be careful with these, son, I said. That is justice inside there. He looked at me confused, took the packages, and left. I sat back in the booth. The diner was noisy, dishes clattered, waitresses yelled orders, but inside my head it was quiet. The kind of quiet you feel after you drop the hammer on a nail, and you know it went in straight. She is still in my house, Solomon, I said quietly. She is still sleeping in my bed. She is still posting videos calling me a predator. Solomon closed his laptop. Not for long, Gus. The wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind exceedingly fine. Once the Bureau sees that passport and those wire transfers, they will move fast. She is a flight risk. They will not send a letter. They will send a tactical team. I looked out the window at the parking lot. I saw my old truck. It was dented and dusty. It was humble, but it was honest. Brittany thought she was playing chess. She thought she was 3 moves ahead because she had the house and the sympathy of the internet. She did not realize that I had just flipped the board over. I am going to get a room, I said, standing up. Not at the Starlight. Somewhere decent. I need a shower, and I need to shave. Why, Solomon asked, gathering his papers. Because, I said. When they bring her out in handcuffs, I want to look like the man she tried to destroy. I want to look like Augustus Miller. I walked out of the diner. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and red. It was a beautiful evening. The air smelled of rain coming in from the desert. I took a deep breath. Enjoy the house tonight, Brittany, I thought. Eat off my china. Drink my wine. Because tomorrow the landlord is coming to collect the rent. And the price is going to be everything you have. The rats always know when the ship is going down. They do not need a weather forecast, and they do not need a captain's announcement. They feel the vibration in the hull. Brittany Miller or Elena Petrova or whatever name was on the passport in her purse felt the vibration the moment the courier van left Solomon's office. She did not know exactly what we had sent to the FBI, but she knew the air had changed. The silence from her usual legal contacts, the way her bank account froze for a microsecond before processing a transaction, it was the smell of ozone before lightning strikes. We were parked across the street from the luxury hotel where they had been staying since the restraining order. Dutch was in the passenger seat with his laptop open, connected to the hotel Wi-Fi network he had cracked 20 minutes ago. She is moving money, Gus, Dutch said, his voice flat. She just liquidated the joint savings account. $40,000 transferred to a crypto wallet. Now she is hitting the credit cards. Cash advances. Maxing them out one by one. I watched the 4th floor window. The curtains were drawn, but I could see shadows moving frantically. She is cutting him loose, I said. She was not just leaving my son, she was gutting him. She was taking the money for the rent, the money for the lawyer, the money for food. She was stripping the carcass clean before the vultures even arrived. Inside room 412, the scene was playing out exactly as I had predicted. We found out the details later from the police report and the hotel security footage, but in my mind, I saw it happening in real time. Justin had been in the bathroom trying to wash away the shame of his television appearance. When he came out, he picked up his phone. He saw the notifications. 0 balance. Overdraft alert. Credit limit reached. He must have frozen. The cold realization washing over him like ice water. The woman he had betrayed his father for was stealing the last thing he had. He walked into the bedroom. Brittany was there. She had 2 large suitcases open on the bed. She was not folding clothes. She was throwing things in. Jewelry, cash, the hard drives. She was dressed in comfortable clothes, running shoes, and a hoodie. She was dressed for travel. Brittany. Justin asked, his voice trembling. Why did I just get an alert that our savings account is empty? She did not look up. She kept zipping a pouch full of diamonds. Because I took it, she said. Justin stepped forward. What do you mean you took it? We need that money for the legal defense. We need that for the hotel. There is no we, Justin. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were dead. The mask of the loving wife was gone completely, replaced by the cold efficiency of a predator moving to the next hunting ground. You are a sinking ship, she said, zipping the suitcase shut. Your father is coming for blood. The feds are sniffing around. I am not going to prison because you were too weak to control one old man. Justin stared at her. The woman he had worshipped. The woman he had destroyed his family for. You are leaving me, he whispered. After everything I did, I lied for you. I went on TV and called my dad crazy for you, and you were terrible at it. She spat. You are pathetic, Justin. You have always been pathetic. That is why you were such an easy mark. A little flattery, a little attention, and you handed me the keys to the kingdom. But now the kingdom is burning, and I am not sticking around to roast. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase and tried to push past him. Get out of my way, she growled. My Uber is 5 minutes away. Something inside my son finally snapped. Maybe it was the loss of the money. Maybe it was the insult. Or maybe it was the crushing weight of the truth landing on his shoulders all at once. He grabbed her arm. No, he yelled. You are not going anywhere with my money. That is my dad's money. Brittany spun around. She did not hesitate. She dropped the suitcase and swung her fist. It was the same motion she had used on me, but this time she had a heavy gold ring on her finger. She caught him on the jaw. Justin stumbled back, crashing into the desk. The lamp shattered. You think you can stop me, she screamed. You are nothing. You are a loser just like your father. Justin lunged at her. For the first time in his life, he fought back. He grabbed the strap of her bag, trying to wrestle it away. They crashed onto the floor. It was ugly. It was desperate. It was the violent end of a violent lie. Brittany was smaller, but she was vicious. She scratched his face, drawing blood. She kicked him in the stomach. She was fighting like a trapped animal. Let go, she shrieked, biting his hand. Justin yelled in pain, but he did not let go. He wrapped his arms around her legs, dragging her down as she tried to crawl toward the door. You are not leaving, he shouted, sobbing. You are not leaving me here alone. She kicked him in the face. Once, twice. Justin rolled away, clutching his nose, blood pouring through his fingers. Brittany scrambled to her feet. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase. She was panting, her hair wild, her eyes manic. Goodbye, Justin, she said, breathless. Don't wait up. She threw the door open and ran into the hallway. Down in the truck, Dutch closed his laptop. She is on the move, Gus. She is heading for the elevator. I started the engine. I did not need to speed. I knew where she was going, and I knew she was not going to make it. I looked up at the hotel window one last time. I thought of my son bleeding on the carpet of a generic hotel room, realizing that the love of his life was nothing more than a thief with a pretty face. I felt a pang of pity, but it was fleeting. Pain is a teacher, and tonight class was in session. Let us go meet her, I said to Dutch. She has a flight to catch, but I think her itinerary just changed. We pulled out of the parking spot. The hunt was entering its final phase, and the prey was running right into the net. The lobby of the luxury hotel was usually a place of hushed voices and soft piano music, but tonight it was a cacophony of shouting and static from police radios. I walked through the sliding glass doors just as the elevator pinged and opened. It was perfect timing, the kind you usually only see in movies, but tonight fate was directing the show. A phalanx of officers was waiting. They did not have their guns drawn, but their hands were hovering near their holsters. The moment the steel doors slid apart, the screaming started. Brittany was the first one out. She was not walking, she was being dragged. Her hands were already cuffed behind her back. Her hair was wild and matted with sweat. She was kicking at the officers, screaming about her rights, screaming about lawsuits, screaming that she was a victim of a conspiracy. Then came Justin. My son looked like a ghost who had been beaten up by reality. His nose was swollen and purple from where Brittany had kicked him. His designer shirt was torn at the collar. He was crying. Not the silent, dignified tears of a man in pain, but the loud, heaving sobs of a child who wants his mother to come fix a scraped knee. They hauled them into the center of the lobby, right in front of the marble fountain. The guests who had been drinking cocktails in the lounge were standing up, holding their phones, recording every second of the downfall. I stopped about 10 feet away. I stood next to Solomon, who had arrived minutes before me with the federal agents. Justin saw me. His eyes lit up with a desperate, pathetic hope. He tried to lunge toward me, but the officer held him back. "Dad." Justin yelled. His voice was thick with blood and mucus. "Dad, help me, tell them I did not know. She tricked me, Dad. I am your son. You cannot let them take me." I watched him struggle. I watched the boy. I had raised the boy. I had taught to fish the boy. I had bailed out of every mistake he ever made. Brittany saw me too. She stopped screaming for a second. Her eyes narrowed into slits of pure hate. "Do not listen to him, Gus," she spat. "He is in on it. He forged the signatures. He is setting me up." An FBI agent stepped forward. He was a tall man in a cheap suit who looked like he had zero patience for drama. "Elena Petrova," he said, addressing Brittany, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering." Then he turned to Justin. "Justin Miller, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and aiding and abetting a fugitive." Justin fell to his knees. The marble floor cracked against his kneecaps. No, I am a victim, Dad. Please do something. Use the trust fund, get me a lawyer." I took a step forward. The room went quiet. Even the police officers paused, watching the interaction between a father and his son. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Justin stopped crying. He looked at my hand. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He thought I was reaching for my checkbook. He thought I was reaching or a phone number for a high-priced defense attorney. He thought that even after everything, the bank of Dad was open for business one last time. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was old. The creases were worn white. I walked up to Justin. I did not kneel down to his level. I made him look up at me. "You keep saying you are my son, Justin," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried across the lobby. "You say that like it is a get-out-of-jail-free card." I unfolded the paper. It was a DNA test result from 10 years ago. Justin blinked, confused. "What is that?" "Do you remember when you were 22, I asked. "You got arrested for drunk driving. You cried then too. You told me that you did not know why you were so different from me. You said you felt like you did not belong in our family. You said you wished you were not a Miller." Justin nodded slowly. "Well, son," I said, "I wished it too." The words hit him harder than Brittany's fist. "After your mother died, I found this test," I said, holding it up so he could read the bold letters. "I took it because part of me prayed that you were right. I prayed that somewhere along the line there had been a mix-up at the hospital. I prayed that the reason you were so weak, the reason you were so easily led, the reason you had no honor, was because you did not have my blood in your veins." I dropped the paper. It fluttered down, landing on his chest. "Positive," I said. 99.9% probability. You are my son, Justin. You have my DNA. You have the blood of heroes and builders running through you." I leaned in closer. "And that is why I am not helping you. Because you had every advantage. You had the nature and you had the nurture. And you chose to be a coward. You chose to let a woman beat your father. You chose to steal. That is not a mistake, Justin. That is a character flaw, and prison is the only place that can fix that. Justin stared at the paper. The realization washed over him. I was not disowning him because he was a stranger. I was disowning him because he was a disappointment. "Dad," he whispered. "Please. I am scared." "I know," I said. "You should be." I turned my back on him. "Take them away," I said to the agent. "Wait!" Justin screamed. "Dad, do not walk away." "Dad." I walked toward the exit. I heard the scuffle as they hauled him up. I heard the heavy glass doors of the hotel slide open. I stepped out into the night air. It was cold, but it felt clean. Solomon walked beside me. He did not say a word. He knew what it cost a man to cut off his own limb to save the body. I stopped at the curb. I looked back through the glass walls of the lobby. I saw them shoving Justin into the back of a black SUV. I saw Brittany being pushed into another. They were going to separate facilities. Their partnership ended not with a bang, but with the slamming of car doors. The convoy pulled away, sirens wailing into the night. I took a deep breath. My chest hurt. My heart felt like it had been ripped out and trampled on, but my head was high. "Let us go get a drink, Solomon," I said. Solomon nodded. "Whiskey double," I said. We walked down the street, leaving the hotel and the chaos behind. I was childless now. I was a widower and I was alone. But as I walked under the streetlights, I realized something. I was free. The anchor that had been dragging me down for years was finally cut loose. It was a terrible freedom bought at a terrible price, but it was mine. And I was going to live the rest of my life ensuring that the name Miller meant something again. The sound of a gavel hitting a wooden block is a lot like the sound of a hammer hitting a nail. It is a sound of finality. It is the sound of a job being finished. I sat in the back row of the federal courthouse exactly 1 year after the day my daughter-in-law slapped me, and I listened to that sound echo through the room. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Brittany Miller, or Elena Petrova, as the court documents named her, did not look like an influencer anymore. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit that washed out her complexion. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and without her makeup, she looked plain. She looked small. When the judge read the sentence, she did not scream. She did not cry. She just stared at the table in front of her. 15 years in federal prison. 15 years for wire fraud, identity theft, racketeering, and elder abuse. She would be 50 years old when she saw the outside world again. Her youth, her beauty, and her schemes had all been cashed in for a concrete cell. Then it was Justin's turn. My son stood up. He looked thinner. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow resignation. The judge gave him 3 years. It was a light sentence thanks to Solomon's plea deal, but it was still prison. 3 years to think about the choice he made. 3 years to think about the father he betrayed. As the marshals led him away, he looked back at me. He did not ask for help this time. He just nodded. It was a nod of acceptance. He finally understood that actions have consequences that no amount of money can fix. I walked out of the courthouse and I did not look back. I got into my truck and drove straight to the house in the suburbs. The for sale sign in the yard had a bright red sold sticker across it. I had accepted an offer from a young couple with a baby on the way. They reminded me of Martha and me 40 years ago. They had dreams and they had love, and they did not care about the address, they just wanted a home. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. The furniture was gone. The carpets were cleaned. The ghost of Brittany and her cameras and her shouting was gone. I stood in the kitchen where it all happened. I looked at the spot where I had cooked that steak dinner. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. just a quiet sense of closure. I left the keys on the counter, locked the door behind me, and walked away. I did not cry. I had done my crying a long time ago. I drove north. I drove until the suburban sprawl turned into farmland, and the farmland turned into mountains. I drove until the air became thin and smelled of pine needles and snow. When I pulled into the driveway of the cabin at Lake Tahoe, the sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. It was quiet here, but it was not the lonely quiet of the Starlight Motel. It was a peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that lets a man breathe. I unpacked my bag. I put the picture of Martha on the mantel above the stone fireplace. "I am home, Martha," I whispered, and I kept my promise. I spent the first few months fixing up the place. I repaired the deck Brittany wanted to destroy. I sanded the wood until it was smooth as silk and stained it a warm honey color. I planted a new rose garden for Martha. I woke up with the sun and went to sleep with the stars. For a while I thought this would be enough. I thought I would just fade away here, a hermit on a hill. But a builder cannot stop building. It is not in our nature. And a father, even one who lost his son, cannot stop needing someone to teach. I was sitting on the porch one morning, watching an eagle circle the lake when the idea hit me. I had this land. I had these skills. And there were thousands of kids out there who had neither. Kids who were like I was before the Corps gave me direction. Kids who had been thrown away or left behind. I called Solomon. I told him to liquidate the rest of the trust fund. "All of it, Gus?" he asked. "All of it," I said. "I am not saving it for a rainy day anymore, Solomon. I am building an ark." That was 6 months ago. Today, the silence of the lake is broken by the sound of laughter and the beautiful, chaotic noise of construction. I walked across the yard of what is now the Miller Skills Camp. It is not a place for rich kids to learn how to canoe. It is a place for foster kids and orphans to learn how to build a life. Literally. We teach them carpentry. We teach them plumbing. We teach them how to wire a house and how to fix an engine. We teach them that they have value not because of who their parents are, but because of what they can do with their own 2 hands. I saw a group of teenagers framing a new shed near the tree line. Among them was a boy named Leo. He was 14 years old, small for his age, with messy hair and eyes that were always darting around like he expected someone to hit him. He reminded me of Justin at that age, but without the entitlement. Leo had been in the foster system since he was 4. He had never had a room of his own, let alone a father. I walked over to him. He was struggling with a framing hammer. He was gripping it too high up the handle, choking it, trying to force the nail into the wood with brute strength. The nail kept bending. He was getting frustrated, his face turning red. He looked ready to throw the hammer into the woods. I stepped in. "Easy, son," I said. Leo flinched. He looked at me expecting a reprimand. I did not yell. I stepped up beside him. "You are fighting the tool," I said gently. I reached out and adjusted his hand, sliding it down to the base of the handle. "Let the hammer do the work. It knows what to do. You just have to guide it." I placed a new nail on the wood. "Try again," I said. "Keep your eye on the nail head. Breathe. Swing." Leo took a breath. He swung. The hammer came down in a smooth arc. Bang! The nail went in straight and true. He looked at me, his eyes wide with surprise. "I did it." I smiled. "You did it. Do it again." I watched him drive the next nail, and the next. I saw the confidence growing in him with every strike. I saw his shoulders relax. I saw a smile break across his face that was genuine and bright. In that moment, I saw the ghost of the relationship I had always wanted with Justin. I had tried to teach Justin this same lesson in the garage 30 years ago, But Justin had been bored. He had complained that it was too hard, that he would just pay someone to do it when he grew up. He never understood that the value was not in the nail. The value was in the discipline. Leo looked up at me. "Thanks, Gus." I patted him on the shoulder. It felt solid. "Good job, Leo. Keep building." I walked back to the porch and sat down in my rocking chair. I looked out at the camp. I saw dozens of kids learning, working, laughing. I saw Solomon walking near the dock, talking to a donor. I saw Mark Davidson, who I had hired as the camp manager, teaching a girl how to read a blueprint. I took a sip of my iced tea. My daughter-in-law slapped me, and she thought she broke me. She thought she could take my family away. But she was wrong. She just cleared the brush so I could plant a new garden. I looked at the camera one last time. I learned a hard lesson this year. I learned that blood is just biology. It is an accident of birth. It does not make you family. Family is the people who respect you. Family is the people who stand by you when the world calls you crazy. Family is the boy who listens when you teach him how to hold a hammer. I am Augustus Miller. I am 71 years old, and I am just getting started. If you are listening to this, do not let anyone tell you it is too late to start over, and do not let anyone treat you like you do not matter. You have the power to build your own life. Sometimes you just have to tear down the old house first. Thanks for watching, and remember, the foundation is everything.